Hello and welcome to the Biohack Her podcast. I'm Azra Alagich, your host and founder of Biohack Her. I'm an integrative nutrition health coach specializing in longevity for women, a health and wellness journalist, writer, corporate consultant, and a biohacking advocate. Biohack Her is a space where we can explore ways to optimize our health to live well longer, whether it's through improving our nutrition, exercising, cryotherapy, supplementation, technology, and more. I'll be bringing you information and interviews with the best longevity experts to help you understand what you can do to optimize your health, prevent disease, and slow down or even reverse the symptoms of aging by taking control of your unique bio-individuality. Want to know more? Let's dive in. Hey everyone, today I chat to Dr. Anna Cabeca, the best-selling author of The Hormone Fix, Keto Green 16 and Menopause. Dr. Anna is triple board certified and a fellow of gynecology and obstetrics, integrative medicine, and anti-aging and regenerative medicine. She holds special certifications in functional medicine, sexual health, and bioidentical hormone replacement therapy. Women's health has historically had limited scientific research, often been misinformed, and even discussions on women's health have been gagged for a variety of reasons, whether it's because of subjects like menopause being considered taboo, which is why my chat with Dr. Anna is so important. Dr. Anna opens the lid on women's hormones and explains in detail what it takes to stay slim and sexy after 40. We discuss how a woman's body changes when she becomes perimenopausal, menopausal, and postmenopausal, the dietary changes that help keep that hormonal fat at bay, how intermittent fasting can help with the symptoms of hormonal changes, the evolution of treating hormonal changes, why what worked for women before menopause doesn't work for them after, and why oxytocin is your most important longevity hormone, and so much more. This really is a super informative pod episode that every woman should listen to, and not just those in midlife, because no matter what age you are, Dr. Anna's insight into how a woman's body works and how it can be optimized will benefit all women. I hope you enjoyed today's chat with Dr. Anna. Please share with the women in your life so we can all feel empowered to live well longer. Let's jump in. Hey, Dr. Anna, welcome to the pod. How are you doing?
Oh, I am great. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's great to have you on. Super excited. We're here to talk about how to stay slim and sexy after 40. Now, I know that when I hit 40, I had so many changes that happened to my body in quite unexpected ways, I suppose. I don't think I was really prepared for some of the changes that was coming my way due to the hormonal changes and the physical changes. Can you explain what some of those changes are that women do experience when they hit 40?
Yeah, well, there's the difficulty sleeping, not feeling rested, the drop in energy, the weight gain without doing anything different. Sometimes it's the hair loss, it's adult acne. You're like, what the heck is happening? It's puberty all over again in reverse. And brain fog, mood swings. Things like that are happening because our hormones are shifting. Our major reproductive hormones like progesterone and DHEA predominantly, and then testosterone and estrogen really decline during the perimenopause and menopause time period. It's estimated that we lose 75% of progesterone between age 35 and 55. I mean, that's a huge shift. Our body recognizing something's going on here. And the other hormones that start to increase that contribute to the symptoms is cortisol and insulin. So it becomes this like perfect storm sometimes.
Yeah, it certainly does feel like a perfect storm sometimes, that's for sure. Can you break down those hormonal fluctuations during perimenopause and menopause and how they specifically impact weight management, in particular women? Because, we end up with that menopause belly and no one likes to feel like they're suddenly gaining weight and not understanding the cause of that.
No, yeah, absolutely. And there really are, I think, 13 hormones that are really affecting our weight during this menopausal transition. But it starts also with the shift in glucose metabolism, the ability for our brain's ability to use glucose for fuel. And that stems from loss of progesterone as well as loss of estrogen. So we know that the use of fuel in our brain is hormone dependent to use glucose. but yet it's not to use something like ketones. It's independent of our hormones. And so that's a powerful shift. And insulin, as we become more insulin resistant as we age, that's why menopause is a risk factor for heart disease. It's crazy to think about it, but menopause is a risk factor for heart disease. It's a risk factor for dementia. It's a risk factor for diabetes. As these changes, that these hormones that have been protecting us start to decline, and other hormones such as the insulin increasing or becoming more insulin resistant. We have increasing in cortisol, which is increasing our glucose, which tends to be the spiral of increasing insulin, and we make cortisol from progesterone. So it further increases this drain on our neuroprotective hormone progesterone. I mean, progesterone is more important in the brain even than it is in the uterus. And then we see leptin resistance and increasing in leptin. So you're like, I'm never satisfied. I laugh because I think of the Hamilton movie, the Hamilton musical. And there's a song in there, like it's called I Will Never Be Satisfied, or I'm Never Satisfied, or something like that. And it's like, that's leptin. That's what leptin does. And so that sense of being hungry all the time or never feeling cravings, as well as the hormone ghrelin, starts to increase. And ghrelin, it's interesting, it's spelled GHRELIN. So it's like a gremlin, essentially. It's a gremlin hormone. And it is that hunger hormone. So we produce more ghrelin and we're constantly hungry, and those are some of those key changes, as well as adiponectin, which is building fat on our body.
I'm particularly interested in how glucose impacts our brain, and in particular, how that contributes to brain fog. Can you break that down for us in a little bit more detail in terms of how that works?
Yeah, absolutely. So for our brain's ability in our body in general, and mitochondria from a cellular level, we use glucose for fuel. Predominantly, it's the quick release. We've got it accessible, and we use glucose for fuel, or we use ketones for fuel. And so glucose is that, it's fuel for the brain. And in order for our gluconeogenesis to occur, so the ability of our brain cellularly on a cellular level to produce glucose and use it for fuel, is hormone dependent. And there's been a significant amount of research on, the estrogen impact on glucose metabolism in the brain, but as well progesterone, that steep decline in progesterone, which is a precursor, progesterone and pregnenolone are precursor hormones that downstream estrogen is derived from. So when we get that big plummeting, that we lose that neuroprotection and also that function of the brain's ability to use glucose for fuel. So the brain fog, the anxiety, the mood swings, the irritability, all of those symptoms start to spike during that time. And they're really neurologic symptoms or neuroendocrine symptoms. And that's probably one of the most challenging experiences women have when we're going through these fluctuations.
Yeah, and I suppose for family members, it might translate into irritability, those mood swings, the crankiness and so on. And they probably think, oh my God, what is going on with my partner or my mum? She seems to be really cranky today. And so I think it's really important for other people, family members and friends, to understand that, if there's a woman that's post 40, she might be perimenopause, menopausal, that there might be other contributing factors that are impacting her behavior, perhaps.
Absolutely. I like to say, if you only hate your partner 2 weeks of the month, maybe it's your hormones and not necessarily 100% your partner.
Good point. So with these metabolic changes, what can women do to counteract those changes?
So one thing really focusing on, because as we age, and the risk factors of aging also is a consequence of acidity in our body too. So like I talk to clients about becoming keto green or keto alkaline, to really focusing on nutrition that enhances so important minerals and electrolytes and nutrients and mineral rich foods, the alkalinizing greens, especially the really potent like broccoli sprouts, for instance, beet greens, rich in minerals and antioxidants and alkaline, very alkalinizing to our body, feeding our gut microbiome. One of the things I just have clients do is check their urine pH. I mean, it's such a simple thing. And yet when we monitor that and adjust our nutrition and our lifestyle and our attitude, because positivity is very alkalinizing because it increases oxytocin and opposes cortisol, we start to see shifts in the urine pH to be more alkaline. And so as we recognize that combination, that's key, because when our urine pH is more acidic, it's a sign that our body is off balance. And we're going to do everything to keep homeostasis, keep our blood pH in that slightly alkaline state, homeostasis. But, we're breaking down bone and muscle in the process. So the more alkaline your urine pH is that's a really key biomarker for health and longevity. And we've seen research that has shown urine pH 7 or greater is associated with less cancer, less osteoporosis, less dementia, less metabolic diseases. That's heart disease, hypertension, diabetes. And that's powerful. And a lot of that is within our control through our own lifestyle choices to balance our hormones. So that's one key thing, because I also promote a healthy way to get into ketosis, at least periodically, because again, you're now bypassing the whole glucose metabolism shifts in the brain. You get into ketosis, and now you've got that that stable foundation again. And, the brain fog goes away, the memory improves, the cravings go away. And getting into a state of ketosis can be very acidifying, if you think of the traditional keto diets, it's the bacon, butter, steak, or carnivore, or whatever it may be. But you've got to add those alkalinizers, because in comparison to men have 10 times more testosterone, an anabolic steroid hormone, than women do. So we're more inclined to go into that acidic state a lot quicker. So the combination of the two, getting keto green, makes a difference. And I give you an idea of what that looks like. So with a keto green way to start our day, my daughter made me a beautiful keto green breakfast, and it was just fried organic eggs and ghee with good seasoning, Himalayan sea salt, some za'atar, which is a thyme herb with sesame seeds, and black pepper, and served on a bed of arugula with some sauerkraut and drizzled with olive oil. And it's a very keto green breakfast. There's less than 5 grams of carbs in that breakfast.
It sounds really yummy as well. I always like to kick off my day with some nice organic eggs myself. So yeah, absolutely a great breakfast. And I think in terms of your advice around making sure that your pH balance is in the alkaline level, then you've got these home tests as well that you can easily be checking that quite regularly. You don't have to be going to the doctor all the time to do that, do you?
No, and it costs pennies. It costs pennies. You can get from any pharmacy a pH hydrion paper, which is just this roll of this yellow colored paper that measures your pH from a pH of about 5 to 8, 8.5. And it's really inexpensive. You can tear off a sheet, but I created, because when I first started creating, now over 10 years ago, my keto green plan, I was having keto strips, urine pH paper, and I'm doing all these things. So I created a combination urine test strip that has a ketone pad, a pH pad, as well as a uric acid pad, so that we can monitor these 3 key biomarkers for how well we're doing. Are we really hitting into the alkaline state? Are we really getting into ketosis? I mean, because I've had through the years, even people that were eating really healthy vegan diets be very acidic because of stress. And other people, I remember speaking at a keto conference, that was 1,000 people in the audience. I'm like, how many people do keto? And everyone raises their hands. And I'm like, well, how many people check your ketones, either blood, urine, breath? Those are 3 ways we can check. And less than 10 people had their hands up. I'm like, you're not doing keto if you're not checking to see if you're getting into ketosis. You've really got to get into ketosis, because too much protein even will take you out of ketosis.
Yeah, well, it's a really important point, because, you're wasting your time if you're not actually in ketosis and you're trying to make all of these changes. So obviously you've highlighted a number of different changes that happen to a woman's body as a result of hitting those hormonal changes. One of the questions that has come through in the lead up to our chat today was that this mid-belly fat that women just can't get rid of. Can you explain why specifically our weight tends to go right to our belly once we hit a certain age and once these hormone changes kick in? and why it's so much harder to get rid of it.
Yeah, it definitely is. And I'm coming from a place where I fought with weight my entire life. When I was 38, I was well over 240 pounds, pre-diabetic. I mean, and so I get this. I mean, this is an important area and I love it to have a flat tummy and to feel happy at my happy, healthy weight. And I think that's really important that we feel at home in our bodies. It's one thing to look good, it's another to feel really healthy. So when we start to see this weight gain, especially around the abdomen, first, I always think of the hormone imbalances. It comes to three things. I call it the devil's pitchfork. It is hormone imbalance, so imbalanced hormone issues. It's inflammation, so inflammation within our body, which tends to increase as we age. So we've got to really continue to be very, very proactive, and that's in the biohacker space, always getting down inflammatory markers. And then the third is adrenal dysfunction. So the adrenal dysfunction tends to be really a huge player in menopause belly. It's a huge player in menopause belly. And so what I've seen in incorporating the keto green lifestyle into people's lives and menopause and beyond is, the improvement in the waistline, right? Losing inches around the waistline. And between visceral fat and subcutaneous fat, that makes a huge difference in the quality of our lives. Also because of our relating to the hormonal changes that are also happening because of changes in our gut microbiome, become more sensitive during this time period. We're losing this fertilizer hormone of progesterone. We like to think of it as the fertilizer hormone. Certainly it's a key to fertility, but it's also key to helping, biohacking, key to aging well, both progesterone and pregnenolone. And within the gut microbiome, you have the estrobolome, so key bacteria that are working to detoxify estrogen. So when these pathways aren't open, clear, optimized, we tend to have an increased toxic burden, and that also increasing inflammation, increasing cortisol, which is our natural anti-inflammatory, and that specifically leads to that menopause belly.
Yeah, that's a big challenge for a lot of women. So, in terms of trying to address that specifically, what would your suggestions be?
So definitely intermittent fasting. Everything we could do to become insulin sensitive, intermittent fasting. And really monitoring so that we're ideally at least 5 days a week getting less than 40 or 50 grams of carbs a day. And the carbs that we do get, they should be low glycemic, very alkalinizing, fiber rich. And that's, I think that's a really big first step. And the intermittent fasting is such an important piece. I know you talk about this. But when I read the research in 2017 published in the Journal of the American Medical Association that looked at women with a history of breast cancer, and it showed that women with a history of breast cancer who fasted at least 12 and a half hours between dinner the night before and the morning they broke fast had a significantly reduced risk of recurrent breast cancer. And that was like, well, we all need to be doing this. So
Yeah.
I built that into my programs to fast, between 13 to 16 hours a day with also breaking fast by 10 or 11 a.m. because we have those metabolic clock genes that are most active between 6 and 11 a.m. So we want to work with them and not extend those fasting intervals too long, too often.
Yeah. I think that intermittent fasting is an interesting one because there are two schools of thought around it for women over 40. There are some out there that say, I think like us, that yes, it helps. And there's others that feel that it doesn't help and that women who are over 40 should not be intermittent fasting. What are your thoughts on this? And I suppose, how does that then contribute to ensuring that women can get sufficient protein levels, for instance, because obviously that's a contributing factor in terms of making sure that we maintain muscle. But also, if you're intermittent fasting and you're going to the gym in the morning and you're not sufficiently fueled because you are intermittent fasting, then you can't build the muscle, according to some schools of thought. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So I've been, the N of one, me and as a physician, but also as a woman who's struggled with weight and everything and hormones and these issues, I found that getting keto green is really essential. But intermittent fasting is key. But also when I was fasting too long, I started building up too much uric acid. And I was gaining weight, even though I was fasting and eating even less than 20 grams of carbs a day. And I was like, well, wait, what's going on here? And it was that uric acid that was affecting my metabolism, my metabolic function. So basically, high levels of uric acid are associated with gout. But uric acid is a metabolic marker that causes a metabolic stall, a sense of hibernation in our body. Like, okay, let's store all of this because famine's coming type of sensation. So when you're fasting too long, you can start to build uric acid. You can get into a more catabolic state. And I would do yoga, like infrared yoga, like a very athletic type of yoga sport in the morning at 6 a.m. to really work so that I was breaking fast as soon as I would drink electrolytes before I went to the gym. So I drank my adaptogenic blend of Mighty Maca, and I would add in electrolytes to my water bottle and then break fast. The research says within 45 minutes after an intense workout, and then eat dinner a lot earlier whenever that was possible. And no snacking. I think snacking is without doubt disruptive to our metabolism. And sometimes I have to prove it to my patient. So, I had a beautiful young patient the other day, a young 35-year-old woman who was struggling, PCOS diagnosis, irregular cycles, acne, facial hirsutism, and her hemoglobin A1C was a good, healthy, optimal range. It was 5.3, which is good. And I like it closer to 5.0. And her fasting insulin was 6.7, which is nice and low. And her fasting glucose for the blood test was 90. So I like it in the 80s or less, but it was 90. And I was like, okay, just looking at that, that's fine. But she had all the symptoms. And so I do what's called a 2-hour glucose to insulin challenge test. So a 2-hour glucose to insulin challenge test. If you had anyone was pregnant around, as an obstetrician at around 26 weeks or so, we give you a glucose challenge test. We make you come in fasting, drink this very sweet 50-gram glucose load. So when you're not pregnant, we give you 75-gram glucose load. We check your blood work fasting, make you drink this, and we check insulin at the same time. And then at 30 minutes, 1 hour, and 2 hours, we check your glucose and your insulin. And so her glucose went up after the fast and came down to an acceptable range, which if we had just looked at the glucose curve, it would have been fine. But her insulin had shot up to 77 at 1 hour. And at 2 hours, it was still at 79. And it should be down below 20. That's insulin resistance. And that's from like the 3 meals, 3 snacks. I think I'm doing everything right. And it's not, it creates this insulin resistance. And for some genotypes, it affects us more than others. And so being able to say, okay, this is why you can't have snacks. This is why you have to intermittent fast. And as we get older, we all kind of become more insulin resistant, regardless of our genetic type. So it's important to see that. And I think, and when that's happening with insulin resistance, that's more belly fat, more visceral fat. So fat around our organs, and it causes more inflammation.
Yeah, it's such a mixed cocktail of things that are happening with the body, and it can be quite confusing. So thank you for breaking that down. So you're a big advocate of the ketogene diet, and then also about intermittent fasting as well. So we've just gone over that.
Yeah, I was going to say one more thing when we think about that, because speaking of biohacking, and I love you. I love your podcast. I love the information you get out. I had the father of biohacking over for dinner Monday. He was passing through Dallas. So I had Dave Asprey over. And so we were talking about this. One of the questions that came up in my Magic Menopause coaching group was about, well, are we supposed to intermittent fast if we have thyroid disease or adrenal disease and all of these things? It's supposed to be, I'm like, there's too much, you can do too much of a good thing, right? You can do too much of a good thing, but check that urine pH and check to see that you're not in the catabolic state with increasing acidic urine pH. That's an indicator. So make sure you're really alkaline. And again, the foods we're eating, eliminating foods that are toxic to our adrenal glands, to our thyroid gland. But the goal with intermittent fasting and the goal with some extended fasting is to get into autophagy and, more importantly, mitophagy, so that we're cleaning out the useless cells, right? Continuously repairing and regenerating our body's own ability to heal itself. So in clients that I work with and following this approach, because I often get that question, is that, we see clients, have to reduce their doses of thyroid meds or come off thyroid meds and also improve their circadian rhythm, because there are many pieces to it. You can't just fast and be in this, catabolic state, and that's gonna hurt you. That is absolutely gonna hurt you.
Mm. And I think a good point that you make there is the bioindividuality point as well, because we're all so different. And I often highlight that because people will say, oh, well, I want to be like you, but you can't be like me and I can't be like you. We've got different biologies, and what's going to work for me won't not necessarily work for you. We actually have to really finesse our approach, I believe, in terms of how we manage our health and manage our hormonal fluctuations and our biomarkers. It's so important for people to understand this, I believe, because it will make a big difference that when you do understand those nuances, then you're going to make much better gains in terms of trying to achieve what those goals are that you're trying to get to.
Absolutely. Yeah.
With the dietary changes, the keto green approach, making sure that we're alkaline, intermittent fasting, in terms of dietary changes post 40, can you break down specifically in terms of nutrition, what type of foods? You've highlighted that to a certain extent, but I'd like to do a deeper dive into that so our women really understand what should they be eating and what shouldn't they be eating. Because, well, as an example, there's been a lot of media recently around processed foods in the States and how, there's a real lobbying going on at the moment with the government over there to try to reduce access to processed foods and promote a whole foods diet. And we're not that far behind you here in Australia, to be honest. I mean, obesity is an issue here in Australia as well. I walk into the supermarket, 90% of our supermarket, if not more, is processed food. And I'm a huge advocate of a whole food diet. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on what women should be eating in particular and whether they should be avoiding processed foods or not.
Yeah, absolutely. In my second book I wrote, it's called Keto Green 16. And I wanted to make the recipes easier, but very medicinal recipes, healing foods that worked in my keto green approach. So to balance our hormones, support detoxification, have healthy elimination, etc. So I chose 16 foods that I used for 16 days in the recipe in different ways and combinations, not all the same day. But like the key thing is you have to prioritize protein. Especially as we get older, we have to prioritize clean, healthy protein. So free range, grass fed, wild caught, organic as much as possible. So that's for me, some of my favorite ones are smoked salmon. It is, the beautiful fish. I love good sea bass, but also grass fed meat. And now I order from one of our regenerative farmers in South Texas. I order their primal round, which is basically, we used to eat nose to tail. So it's organ meat mixed with the ground beef. And that gives you, there's so much nutrients in that. So liver, heart, et cetera, combined in the ground beef. It makes it really nice. My daughter loves it when I make her beautiful sauces and meatballs and burgers with that meat. And also, it's a kind of sneaky way. Like sometimes you have to be a sneaky chef in your house.
Correct.
So, I haven't gotten her to eat my sardines yet, but I'm working on her. She eats sushi, but not sardines. I'm like,
a bit harder to mask sardines than it is to mask liver and heart, I think.
Right. Yeah, haven't quite mastered that. Any advice, I will take it. And like we talked about, organic free range eggs. That's a great source of tyrosine, great source of healthy fats, great source of nutrients. So we look at those prioritize protein first. And then it's for me, it's what grows in nature. What can we get from nature? So all our plant foods that are healthy and optimum. In my programs, I stay away from all grains. So I encourage greens, but I stay away from grains. And so, it's important to maintain low carbs, and grains bump us up. We have to look at that. And you can use it on your feast days, as I call them. You can use it when you're carbing up. But in general, I stay away from that. I stay away from gluten, dairy, any processed foods. You have to eliminate any artificial sweeteners. You have to eliminate all of that because they work against us. And so the healthy greens and sprouts, and also fermented foods. Fermented foods like sauerkraut, kimchi, I used to do pickled ginger, things like that are really good for our gut microbiome, are really good to support digestion as well. Because also as we age, our digestive enzyme production decreases. So you always kind of want to feed back digestive enzymes. Adding bitters and biting on a piece of ginger before you eat really supports that digestive process. So you're empowering your body to dissolve the food better. And then healthy fats. So I love, good olive oil, really good, clean, fresh, cold press, organic olive oil. I love nuts and seeds. I mean, healthy fats are key because hormones are derived from fat, from cholesterol. So we want to make sure that we're getting, and it's also can be very anti-inflammatory, avoiding seed oils, but things like avocado, things like MCT oil, coconut can be incorporated into our diet to help nuts and seeds also that can help us get healthy amounts of fats. And then finally, one thing I learned when I was in Australia, so listening to your accent here, and you said you're from Queensland, and I spent some time up in Kimkin, Australia, and I
Oh,
went
yeah.
to a retreat there way back when. And I remember there was no water on the table. So I went up and I got some water. And for other people at the table, like, oh, we're not supposed to drink with our meal. And it was like aha moment for me because realizing how fluids with our meals dilute our digestive enzymes. So a simple thing to incorporate is, no more than 4 ounces of fluid with your meals, or try not to drink with your meals. Chew your food really, really well.
Yeah.
So you're not needing the drink to wash it down, right? And so, it's such an aha moment for me, but it's such a simple lifestyle change that you can make. Again, that's absolutely free, that changes the quality of your health and digestion.
Yeah, it is a simple change, and a lot of the health retreats here in Australia, they absolutely encourage you not to drink water with your meals because of exactly what you've highlighted. What are your thoughts on alcohol?
Well, yeah, sadly, perimenopause and beyond menopause. And I have even spent time, like, I do research to support my vices. So chocolate, wine, and coffee. So those are three things, but it really doesn't serve us. I mean, again, I think in America, the marketing was resveratrol, wine with dinner. It's okay, drink, encouraging people to drink a glass of wine with dinner. And we really know that the alcohol has no benefit to our health. And so it can actually decrease glucose utilization, so increase fat storage for even over 36 hours after that one glass of wine. So that's working against everything we're trying to do each day. We tend to slower metabolize alcohol as we get older also, and it disrupts sleep.
Yeah.
So really tune into that and pay attention to that. What are we working towards? What are some of the vices we're going to keep, and when are we going to, when are we going to use them? Let's just reduce them or eliminate completely from our lifestyle because it no longer serves us.
No, I
And
agree
so
with
that's a
you.
tough one, though. I love my wine. I'm
Yeah,
telling
me
you.
too, me too. I love my wine as well, and I have been working very hard at eliminating alcohol out of my diet, but eliminating wine has been a tough one. I've got it down to just having, on special occasions, celebrations, only have a drink, one, maybe two socially, because I do find it really impacts my sleep in particular. It's a huge difference when I have had a glass of wine as opposed to not having had a glass of wine. It really disrupts my sleep pattern. Do you think it also impacts the menopausal symptoms as well? Does it contribute to hot
Hot
flashes?
flashes.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So beyond the weight gain, the brain fog, and the disrupted sleep, which I'll send you down the drain, essentially down a spiral, it definitely impacts our sleep, and it increases hot flashes. It is, it's considered one of the top hot flash triggers.
Mm. Just in regards to hormonal changes, can you explain why some women hit menopause at a certain age and others at a different age? Like, for instance, some women will hit menopause later in life. 55 over. Others might hit perimenopause, in their 30s. Why is that? Why do we not all hit menopause around the same time? I suppose it's similar to why do we not get all that? Why do we not all get our period at the same time? But can you break down, is there a specific reason as to why there's such a difference? Is it dietary? Is it physiology? Is it genetic? What is it?
Yeah, I would say a specific reason. No, I cannot. But because it's complicated and individual. For example, I mean, there are many reasons when we look at it to see, okay, well, what could be? So I'll give you the example. I was diagnosed with early menopause at age 39. I was told, and I'd failed infertility treatments, told I'd never be able to have a child, elevated FSH and LH. So those are two lab values that we look at. And, early menopause, no chance for future pregnancy. And that, as a physician, we get a diagnosis like that, or we give a diagnosis. That's it. It's written down. It's in your paperwork. It's, written on your soul, basically. And that's it. But as a result of my journey around the world in 2006 and 2007, one stop was Australia. I not only, with the grace of God, but learning these different traditional modalities, lifestyle techniques, herbs, and healing foods, I not only did reduce early menopause, but I naturally conceived the child I was told I would never be able to have when I was 41 years old.
Amazing.
And so that took me into a whole nother awareness, a level of awareness. So I look back at that time and say, what was going on? Definitely stress was huge, and stress causing glucose, or insulin resistance, high cortisol, dysfunctional circadian rhythm, impaired sleep, all of that affecting our, stress, and it affects our physiology, which affects our fertility and our ovarian production of hormones. So that was a piece of what was going on at that time that led me into that early menopause diagnosis, and then overturning that diagnosis. And then at age 48, felt all the perimenopausal symptoms that we've mentioned in this call. And I was like, okay, well, what's going on? And then after I'd lost 80 pounds, and kept it off for almost a decade, I started gaining weight again without doing anything different. So here at age 48, difficulty sleeping, brain fog, mood swings, irritability, a list of symptoms, and the weight gain without doing anything different of 20 pounds. And I was like, okay, I'm going to be 300 pounds. I got to turn this around. And that led me into keto, and then the drawbacks of keto. And so that added the alkalinizing part and how important that was. And also, my hormones were already dialed in. Thyroid was dialed in. Bioidentical hormones were dialed in. So it takes more than hormones to fix our hormones. So I incorporated these other lifestyle strategies, which is part of ovarian resuscitation, like, ovarian resuscitation, adrenal resuscitation. And then finally at age 50, all those symptoms went away. And in 6 weeks, I lost 18 pounds. And menopause wasn't official for me until age 56. So that we can restore and rejuvenate our body's natural function in many cases. In many cases, when it's because of stress, hormone imbalance issues that are coming from toxicity, coming from our epigenetics, and working with nutrition, lifestyle, and bioidentical hormones can really improve longevity, biohacking, and ovarian function. Toxicity is a really big marker, not just for perimenopause, but of course for cancer, breast cancer, endometrial cancer, and toxicity, estrogen disruptors. You talked about 90% of the grocery, in our grocery stores are processed foods. And you think, okay, the chemicals, the processing, it's just, there's a litany of things. And then the packaging, add on to the packaging that we're getting, and drinking out of plastic bottles, touching a receipt. So bisphosphonates, so BPAs, and phthalates and parabens, all are hormone disruptors. So getting those out of your system empowers your body to be able to use its natural hormones better and safer. So toxicity is another big. So stress, insulin resistance, toxicity, disrupted circadian rhythm, those are all key aspects that layer on disease with ovarian aging. So being able to remove those at any age, whether we're thinking about fertility or not, now at age 50, I'm at 58 now. And I look at myself at 38, 20 years ago, and I think I probably wouldn't be here now. I'd have died of a heart attack, or like my mom have had heart surgery, who had heart surgery at age 52, and had diabetes and all these things. I would be down that path. And versus not on any drugs other than bioidentical hormones. Take my supplements and nutrition. And I walked a section of the Camino de Santiago this summer. So over
Yes,
100
I
miles
saw.
I walked this summer. Did you?
Yeah, I saw on your social. Looked amazing.
It was transformative. It was transformative. So being able to do those things at any age, and that's empowerment piece. The other thing, what sometimes women go through menopause and say, well, I didn't have symptoms. And so, it could be because they're so healthy and really balanced, and it can be, and prioritize sleep, self-care, nutrition, all and movement, etc. That's critical. Or it could be because of hormone disruptors, especially estrogen dominance. And oftentimes I see that in clients with estrogen dominance. And I worry then that they're at risk for endometrial cancer. And I want to do an ultrasound on them because they have too much circulating estrogen, not from what their ovaries are producing, but from fat. We produce estrogen from fat as well. It's an organ. Fat is an organ. So I think of that too as a red flag.
You've touched on estrogen there, and I'd like you to give our listeners a breakdown of each of the hormones, progesterone, testosterone, estrogen, and what roles they play for those that
Yeah.
don't understand that, because I think it's really important, because for some years now, there's been different messaging around estrogen in particular, estradiol, and due to the work of some great doctors in recent times, including yourself, I think there's more, and also due to more recent research, there's a different view around estrogen, there's a different view around HRT. So I'd like to explore that a little bit more with you for our listeners.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it has to do with more female doctors
Oh, yeah.
realizing that what they're prescribing doesn't do shit or is damaging. So I think the more, now when I went into medical school, so this over 30 years ago, there were 15 women in a class of 115.
Yeah, well, there you go.
So 15 women, 100 men in that class. And in my residency as a gynecologist and obstetrician, OBGYN residency at Emory University, we were 60, like for OB, we were 60% male, 40% female. So we're really shifting. And the year after me, they were 50-50. And I think now there's even more women going into OB-GYN residency programs. But so, there's been a big shift over time in the amount of women physicians that are coming through and that awareness piece. Plus, women now on social media, you have a voice, you have a way to interact, you have a way to call people out, say, look, I'm not getting help here. I was dismissed. My doctor said, this is normal for my age and I don't feel normal. I don't want to feel normal. I want to feel optimal. So you have more awareness around this now, and I'm grateful for that awareness. But you also have a lot of misinformation. And there's so much misinformation. Our medical, education was really driven by pharma. And so you have to take that lens that many people were stuck on. They're like, oh no, this is the only way we practice because this pharmaceutical company did research on this Purvera product, and this is what we're supposed to give, and this birth control pill, and this. And you're like, wait. It's like, let me take a step back. It's hard for physicians to do that because they've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on their education and from some, prime years of their life, right? Investing, working 80, 100 hours a week, at least when I did. They're much better about hours now. But, you think, oh, it's got to be right. And I questioned it early on because my mom suffered. My mom had heart bypass at age 52. I was 16. And I realized the research they're basing her care on was done only on men. And then I went into OBGYN to help women's health. And also like there's a paucity, and until today, there's a paucity in research in women. And so looking at that from that lens, and when she passed away at age 67, way too early, way too young, I was like, okay, it wasn't the surgery she needed. It was these underlying issues that we have to address. And that's one of the reasons I call it the devil's pitchfork: inflammation, adrenal dysfunction and hormone imbalance. We address those issues and all those symptoms go away. Seeing people's lives, I mean, it's miracles, transform. And so, that gave me that awareness. And so when we think of so I've been studying this for a long time. And then I had my own journey. I was like, wait, I really have to understand this and fix this because I don't want to struggle for the rest of my life. And early on, digging into the use of bioidentical versus synthetic hormone, that was a passion project of mine to understand the differences between what we had in our drug cabinets and we could write on our prescription pads versus what we could customize naturally for patients or bioidentical. So as I, over these last 30 years of medical practice, figuring all this out, I recognize that in the order of prioritizing hormonal health and to prioritize hormones, we've got to become insulin sensitive. We have to reset our circadian rhythm. So insulin and cortisol are critical to regulate our reproductive hormones. So we can't just do hormones and not address, insulin, cortisol, and the most powerful hormone of our body, oxytocin. So the most alkalinizing, biohacking, age reversing hormone of our body, oxytocin. So you have to look at the entire picture. So I started working through nutritional detox, the keto green plan, supporting phase 1 and phase 2 detoxification, using adaptogens in nature. So combining superfoods together to support our adrenal glands, to support detoxification, to support our ovaries and natural production of hormones. And then I'll add typically DHEA. I use it topically in one of my products. Then I use progesterone and pregnenolone cream. And I start that topically. And I then look at testosterone and estrogen.
Estrogen. I just wanted to explore a little bit
Oh, yeah.
more about estrogen and the importance of estrogen in regards to, whether people should have that as part of their HAT or not.
Yeah. So I think estrogen is very, very important. And we make estrogen from testosterone, which we make from DHEA, which we make from pregnenolone and progesterone. So it's important, understanding that flow is important. We can replace or replenish. I like to say replenish instead of replace because your body's highly intelligent. I don't want to replace what your body's making, but I want to support it to make as much as it can and then support it to, support with additional as needed. So I like to say replenish hormones. So with estrogen, it is critical to replace estrogen. And again, I usually start with DHEA and progesterone and or testosterone first, then add estrogen. It really depends. Like biodiversity, we're each unique depending on what we need, our body composition, etc. So estrogen has been the bad guy. And all this estrogen talk over the last 2 decades has seriously been misogynistic. It has hurt women. It has hurt women. And to understand that, okay, estrogen is a neuroprotective hormone. It's necessary for serotonin, our anti-anxiety neurotransmitter, to work well. They have a partnership. So estrogen is important for our mood, for our behavior, for our sense of ease and calm. And it's also loss of estrogen is associated with hippocampal loss in our brain. So the shrinkage of the hippocampus in our brain, regulatory center, is critical, is an important thing to understand. So we need to be able to use estrogen. Now, there are safe ways to use estrogen. There are safer forms than others of estrogen. And there's also, you want to look at it, how it's detoxing from your body, from either the estrogen you're getting exogenously or the estrogen your body's producing naturally. And so it's important to look at estrogen in many of these ways. And the research way back when, and at Emory, I was one of the researchers on an arm of the HERS trial that was published in the 90s looking at cardiovascular disease in women. And hormone therapy, and specifically estrogen. And then Women's Health Initiative was published in 2002. And I remember I was in solo practice in Southeast Georgia at the time when that research had come out. And I'd already been deep into the research on being able to use estrogen vaginally or topically in women with breast cancer, et cetera. So I knew all the safety studies. And plus, because of the HERS trial and Women's Health Initiative study. And when that trial came out in 2002, it said, well, estrogen and progestins, the Prem-Pro, is associated with increased risk of breast cancer. It's going to cause you to stroke, die of a heart attack, and all of these things. And then as I teased through the literature, and then, at that time, the estrogen arm alone, and they used estrogen alone in women who'd had their uteruses removed. And so, I had a hysterectomy, and that arm of women did not have an increased risk of breast cancer. But the progestin arm, the Provera arm, did. And so that just made sense that it's the Provera that caused the increased risk. The synthetic progestin that's toxic to our body caused that increased risk of breast cancer. Additionally, the oral estrogen and oral progestin, the oral estrogen arm showed an increased risk of stroke, and oral estrogens increase inflammatory markers and can increase our risk of stroke. So transdermal estrogens do not. If you've had a DVT, a blood clot, whatever, transdermal estrogens do not increase your risk of stroke, or risk of clotting, but oral estrogens do. So again, the way we're using these hormones makes a difference. And then, the study went on to look at and republish just 2022, the 20-year follow-up study was published recently that showed women who had no increased risk, again, of estrogen in the breast cancer, or risk of breast cancer in the estrogen only arm. And again, it was the progestin. But back in 2005, Dr. Fournier in France did the EPIC trial, and he looked at progesterone, oral micronized progesterone, bioidentical, versus 3 different forms of progestins. And he showed that oral progesterone does not increase your risk of breast cancer, but all the progestins did with medroxyprogesterone, which is Provera, even though it has the word progesterone in it, is not bioidentical. It is synthetic and highly toxic, had a 4-fold increased risk of those clients had a 4-fold increased risk of breast cancer. And the other progestins, like the pregnane and norpregnane, like norethindrone derivatives, had an increased risk of breast cancer as well. We know that, okay, it's the progestin, not the progesterone. And again, with progesterone seems to be safe orally, but I also use it transdermally with pregnenolone and other neuroprotective hormone that we tend to lose as we age. That's really important for memory and mood and our immune system. So that is like so much information about estrogen. And then recently, just this spring or this summer, the 10 million women study was published. And that looked at women who were Medicare. They were all Medicare patients, essentially. They just looked at their records. It was an evaluation of records of women over age or on Medicare that were filling prescriptions for hormones. They looked at that, and the research showed that women on transdermal hormones did better than women on oral hormones with lower risk. So didn't have a increased risk of heart disease if they were on transdermal, had better and longer quality of life than those that were not on hormones. So when we think about biohacking, we want to look at that, all those pieces together to do it as safely as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. That most recent study is just so interesting and has made so many gains, I think, in terms of providing new clarity around what women should and shouldn't be doing in regards to estrogen and HRT generally. I also read somewhere in some recent studies that estrogen is also now considered a longevity hormone as well, that without it, that we age so much faster. What are your thoughts on that? Is that correct in your view?
Yeah, it definitely is. The lower levels of hormones are associated with aging, all of them. And so lower levels of our reproductive hormones, so progesterone, DHEA, testosterone, and estrogen. And estrogen, again, is critical for gluconeogenesis in the brain. It's critical, it's part of our collagen cross-linking processes, important for our fascia. And so as we lose that, we age more rapidly. We become stiffer, have more arthritic or issues, or even orthopedic issues. So we have to pay attention to that. So it's one of the best biohacks, but you don't need a lot, and definitely don't take it orally, especially post menopause. but use it transdermally and vaginally. But I like to use DHEA on the vulvovaginal area because it works better than estrogen. It is at the cellular level, DHEA converts to testosterone and estrogen. So we get the benefits of increased muscle regeneration, increased glandular production of our own glands, and increased moisture. We turn back the hands of time by using DHEA. And plus, with all the estrogen talk now vaginally, you really have to pay attention for, transference of estrogen to a male partner if you have a male partner. And that's, then you have to worry about timing of sexual play. You have to worry about those things, and we have enough to worry about. So
yeah, definitely. You've got some products yourself that, don't you, that help support women in this space, right?
Yeah, I had to create solutions for me when my doctor's bag was empty.
Yeah.
And from there, for my patients, and through custom compounding hormones throughout the years, really fine tuning my prescription. So I created my signature product, which is called Julva, and it's an anti-aging cream for the vulva. It helps with dryness, vaginal dryness, helps with incontinence, helps with hemorrhoids. I mean, it helps the thinning atrophic changes that will happen to all of us if we don't address it, right? It will happen to all of it. Even if you're on oral hormones or transdermal hormones, it's not getting to the vaginal tissue, the vulvovaginal tissue, and then we're going to have problems. And I mean, it's like the first line of defense is to keep the vagina healthy. In my opinion, I teach on this subject. I do whole lectures on the vaginal health and the pH of the vagina, the microbiome of the vagina, et cetera.
Well, it's important, right? It's so important.
So important. And looking at the research showing the more acidic and the more alkaline the vagina is, because it will get more, the pH is supposed to be acidic, which makes sense because it's a first line of defense. Get rid of the bacteria, viruses, et cetera, that are coming through there. And so it needs to be acidic. And the pH of the vagina, if you consider 7 neutral like water, the pH of the vagina is 3.5 to 4.5. So quite acidic. As we get older, it becomes more alkaline, and that predisposes us to more vaginal infections like bacterial vaginosis, but also viral infections. So you have this increase in cervical cancer, increase in HPV as women get older because of this shift in pH. But we have to protect ourselves from that and really prioritize keeping vaginal health as for our entire life. So we reduce those risks, and that's critically important. And then I have my balance cream, which is a progesterone pregnenolone combination. Pregnenolone's not talked about much, but there's such good research on pregnenolone for both men and women for neurocognition. So healthy brain processing and memory and mood and all of these good things. And progesterone is a direct precursor to DHEA. So I created a topical cream. So it's available to women without a prescription. And it's with progesterone and pregnenolone and tripeptide because we're putting it on our skin. We want it to reduce fine lines and wrinkles and age spots. And so that's why I combine the ingredients I did in my balance cream. We'll use our cosmetic more than we will our hormones. Good for our bones, great. But gets rid of age spots and wrinkles? Yes, give me that.
Absolutely.
Right? That's the way I think anyway. And then, of course, my first product is called Mighty Maca Plus. It's from my healing journey around the world, where I incorporated the foods and the superfoods that really helped me. And it has organic Peruvian maca, and it has turmeric, quercetin, it has a greens blend, it has enzyme blend, it has quercetin in there, and it supports our immune system. Phase 1 and phase 2 detoxification supports our alkalinity as well, as is adaptogenic. And what we've seen in clinical studies is an improvement in our own natural production of DHEA, because there's no DHEA in it, but it improves our natural production of DHEA by 70 to 200% in 2 to 3 months of using 2 to 3 scoops a day. And that's huge.
That is huge.
And it also, because we had all these Mighty Maca babies, and we had a client who was 34 years old and she'd had 2 miscarriages and wasn't able to get pregnant. And her progesterone level was really, really low. And she started using, I never had seen her. She was buying my Mighty Maca, and she wrote me back after she was on it for 4 months. And she said her day 21 progesterone level was always under 6. And since she started taking the maca, now her day 21 progesterone level was 18. And then she became pregnant naturally. And it was like, oh, okay. So adaptogens, that's why I say it takes more than hormones to fix our hormones.
Yes, I agree. I love adaptogens and I use them regularly, and I absolutely am an advocate of them. What other supplements do you recommend that can help with weight management and hormonal balance? Is there anything
Yes.
else in your bag of goodies, so to speak, that you absolutely is your go-to?
Yeah, definitely. I created a keto green shake powder. So that's really good because it's 0 grams of sugar and it has all your multivitamins, minerals, and antioxidants to support healthy estrogen detoxification too. So it's a nice blend in there. And then I know my clients are getting at least their good daily dose of nutrients. Sleep is really important. So vitamin D, for many reasons, certainly for vitamin D is necessary at all our hormone receptors to work well. If we don't have vitamin D on board, we have deficiency in progesterone, deficiency in oxytocin. So you need vitamin D. And vitamin DK, vitamin DK combination is key. So vitamin D and vitamin K together, that's essential. And then I would say what we need to do to get a good night's sleep. What else can we do to get a good night's sleep? And so I use a sublingual melatonin product that I like. It's only 3 milligrams. And I usually have clients start out a half a one or just start with a 3 milligram of melatonin and sublingual, and it's really well absorbed and it can help with deeper restorative sleep. But again, nothing can't out supplement an unhealthy diet and lifestyle or
No.
stress physiology. So support it, but we got to do those other things first. And then berberine for, again, vitamin D also brought up for glycemic control. Vitamin D really helps with blood sugar balance. Head to head, vitamin D and the prescription drug metformin were compared, and it showed vitamin D did as well, if not better, than metformin alone. The combination worked really well to reduce, to improve blood sugar control.
Interesting.
And then a supplement that can be taken that works like metformin, or metformin works like berberine.
Yeah, I take that.
Berberine, yeah, it's so good. It's so good. And it really does help with that glycemic control, and it helps with inflammation. So that's another one that I like to use too. And then for estrogen detoxification, calcium D-glucarate when that's needed, and DIM. So those are two other specific supplements for people that have impaired estrogen detoxification or make a lot of beta glucuronidase. So those two supplements are really good for that too.
Yeah, awesome. I've used melatonin previously to reset my circadian rhythms after experiencing really poor sleep for years, and found it really effective just to get that reset. I'm off it now, but it just did that reset for me where I've just now been able to get into that restorative sleep a lot more easily now and continue it. Women often experience cravings during hormonal shifts. What advice do you have for us on managing those cravings?
Well, definitely getting keto green, because when we're getting into ketosis, those cravings go away. We become more leptin sensitive, more insulin sensitive, and that's key. So then our willpower is physiologic. I always tell my clients that, look, we'll fix your physiology and you have so much willpower, right? You don't even have to think about it anymore. And so that's one thing that's really important for cravings too, is getting that glycemic control. And oftentimes for my patients, I prescribe continuous glucose monitoring. So they wear the continuous glucose monitor in their arm or on their lower abdomen so they can monitor and see what's happening to their blood sugars and how their mood and cravings are related to those blood sugar swings. And that's eye-opening for so many of us, right? That is eye-opening. And the other thing is looking at what we're doing that could be increasing craving. So alcohol, certainly, a coffee sometimes because it's taxing to the adrenals. I know for me, it increases my glucose. And so, that was an eye-opener, caffeine increasing, cortisol increasing glucose. So I realized as I had tried, studied world medicine and cultures, is that really coffee. I lived on a coffee plantation in Brazil too during that time, 2006, 2007. And they would drink the espresso, but after the meal. It wasn't first thing in the morning, right? It's not like, oh, this is your thing first thing in the morning. That is all marketing. Coffee is very acidic. So it was drank at the end of the meal and at a small amount typically, right? And so that makes sense. So now once I realized that was happening, I just shifted my first cup of coffee till after I break fast. I didn't get rid of it.
Wish I could drink coffee. I've never acquired the taste for it. I love the smell of it, but I don't actually like the taste of it. I'd like to touch on exercise because obviously we've talked a lot about diet, managing stress, importance of sleep, hormonal management. What about exercise? Because often what worked for us pre-40 doesn't work for us post-40. What are your thoughts on
Yeah.
the right approach? There's different schools of thought out there.
Yeah, well, definitely one thing that I've realized for myself and my clients is that muscle is magic in menopause. It really is. And we need to do more of the weight bearing exercises beyond body weight exercises, but to do weight bearing exercises. And it can be, incorporated into hiking. I mean, lunging up steps, etc., is a weight bearing exercise. I count that. And that's one aspect. Also, what's really important as we age is the flexibility exercises and balance exercises. That is critical because what creates debilitation in life is hip fractures, falling and breaking something. So, being able to be flexible and strong and have good balance is prioritized at this time of our lives. And walking is so therapeutic for our adrenal glands. It's so therapeutic to get out and get in nature. And we get a lot more than vitamin D from the sun. And being in nature is really restorative for the circadian rhythm. And walking is good for flexibility, it's good for circulation. And you can walk and challenge your balance when you're walking, things like that. I walk on the curb sometimes to really work on my balance now once I realized I wasn't very well balanced when I started walking on those curbs. So doing things to challenge yourself. But for me, walking helps me be a nicer person.
Well, it helps you ground as well. If you're outside and you're walking, you can do some grounding, some earthing, and just rebalance, I find, which I always enjoy. I could chat to you for hours, I think, Dr. Anna, but I know that I need to let you go. I just wanted to touch on any long-term strategies that you have for women that they can adopt in terms of ensuring that they can, manage their weight and stay slim and sexy well into their 50s. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, incorporating a healthy mindset. We didn't talk much about oxytocin, but it's the most powerful hormone in our body. And we look at qualities of people in the blue zones. They're oxytocin increasing qualities like a practice of faith, a good community, feeling safe, having friends and neighbors that you love and care about, right? Having family dinners and eating from nature, from your local area. And things like that are increasing. Having healthy relationships and marriages increases oxytocin. Having pets increases oxytocin. So the thing that I think when we look at all these biohacks that we can do, the most important biohack is increasing oxytocin. I prescribe oxyplay. So microdosing oxytocin throughout our day, the practice of gratitude, positivity, feeling blessed in our present moment and feeling that gratitude in the present moment increases oxytocin and decreases cortisol. And research has shown that oxytocin improves aging brain, aging muscle, it improves longevity, improves the immune system. It improves all of these key aspects of that we want to age well with. So oxyplay throughout the day. So doing things, sexual intimacy, play, massage, all increase oxytocin. So that's what I would say.
Love that. I think that's awesome. And your point around social connection is so important as well. I completely agree with you on that one. One final question for you, Dr. Anna. What does it mean to you to live well longer?
That's a good question. To live well longer, I want to be a naughty 90. I want to be enjoying my grandchildren, my great grandchildren. I want to be enjoying, all my passions as long as I can, right? To have that high quality of life. So to live well longer, to me, that means I'm living my purpose passionately. I'm helping others. I'm serving others.
Love that. I think that's a great way to live for sure. I've always said I'd like to keep dancing on the tables until I'm in my 90s and until I'm 100.
I'll come dance with you. I will come dance with you.
100%. You come down under and join us, and we will have that naughty glass of wine together and dance on the tables together.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I love it. Look, thank you so much for your time today. I just want to express my absolute gratitude for all the work that you do for women, because it's so important. We've seen historically such little research in terms of women's health, and it's great to see doctors such as yourself really leading the charge to ensure that women's voices are heard and that women's health matters. And so thank you very much for that. And thanks for your time today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Well, that's a wrap for today's podcast. Thank you for tuning in. And if you'd like to learn more about biohacking, go ahead and sign up on my website at www.biohack-her.com to get a free copy of my 5 top biohacks to get you kick-started. While you're there, you can also check out my blog page for more tips on biohacking. If you'd like to subscribe to this podcast, you can do so on Apple, Spotify, and Google Play. Let us know if there's anyone you'd like us to talk to in particular, and we'll endeavour to get them on the podcast. Until next time, remember to live well longer.